In this video, we're going to react to some sports betting advice given by a sharp that is actually terrible advice, and we'll back it up using actual true statistics and probabilities. My name's MGCovers. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't subscribed to this channel and you're a regular watcher of this channel, greatly appreciate you subscribing. Before we dive into this video, I want to review our year-to-date record here. We've had a ton of success here to start. You can see there we're profitable in NHL, NCAA basketball, down in NBA, and of course lost that national championship game, but still profitable year to date. 3.29 units. If you're new, we profited 47 units last year. So very successful year last year and off to a good start this year. Now, I also want to show you the actual models where we get our plays from. This is the NCAA basketball model. This is just the straight model, plug and play. 107 and 91. I think that's 55%. Let's take a look at this NHL model. This is a plug and play NHL model, which the sports betting community refers to this as bottom up. I've always used the word plug and play, meaning you're using just the model with no bias factored into that model and no situational angles like injuries, line movement, etc. 30 and 19 over 60%. And then finally, take a look at the NBA model, which is very difficult to model for, considering lineup changes. A lot of the best players will sit out from time to time for rest. We actually made some tweaks to this. We started playing double-digit favorites via my line and only lines via the sports books that were 9.5 and less. 9.5 and less. That's gone 20 and 14 since January 3rd. So super excited about all the changes we've made with these models and look to have a really successful 2025 season. All right, so let's dive into today's video. Now, what you're looking at, this is an excerpt from the VSiN sports betting newsletter, which I subscribe to and get every morning. And they also have their very popular sports betting network where they bring on sharps, other professional sports bettors, and some people in the sports betting space to talk about sports betting related content. But this is from the newsletter, and we'll just read this out loud. Thinking out overtime. If you're contemplating a wager on Sunday's Bills-Chiefs game, Las Vegas professional bettor Steve Fezzik has some advice for you. In his regular Friday appearance on a numbers game with Gil Alexander, Steve had this to say, and this is the root of it, so pay attention. If you bet Kansas City, you must play the money line and not lay the -1.5 or the -2. And this line is now -2, by the way. If you're betting Buffalo, you have to take the +2. Do not bet the money line. This is terrible advice, and we're going to go back and talk about it in a second, but let's continue reading it because he offers his explanation, and this is important. The reason Steve explains is because of the playoff overtime rules, which changed after the 2022 AFC title game between, ironically enough, the aforementioned Bills and Chiefs. KC won the toss, scored, eliminated Buffalo without the Bills ever getting the ball. So basically the NFL had to change the rules to make it, quote, fair for the playoffs. Consider this scenario, he says. Let's assume Kansas City gets a touchdown. Boom, they're up 7. And he's speaking if this game goes to overtime. Buffalo now still gets a possession because that's what the rules are. As sure as the sun's going to come up tomorrow, when Buffalo scores that touchdown, they're down 1. Their analytics team will have figured it out, and they're going to go for 2. So this game is going to land on 1. And that's a pretty bold statement. It's basically pretty straightforward math. You can't kick the extra point because now you go to sudden death, and whoever's got the ball in sudden death has an enormous edge. Okay, so first off, when you're looking at sports handicapping and sports betting, you always want to play into the highest probability there is. And there's something that a term I created called statistical properties. Statistical properties are facts about that sport. Very important. Teams that win in the NFL cover 80% of the time. Teams that cover in the NFL win outright 80% of the time. So that means that if you play KC on the money line, all you're doing is paying more for Kansas City than you should. You should lay the -1.5 or the -2. In the case of Buffalo, 80% of the time, the team that covers is going to win outright. So if your model or how you handicap indicates Buffalo has the edge, you should play Buffalo on the money line. There's no advantage of taking the 2 points. So first off, I want to show you that. And what we'll do is let's go back and look at, now I'm just picking the playoffs just because it's recent, but you can do this for any week of the NFL season. Teams that win in the NFL cover 80% of the time. Teams that cover win outright 80% of the time. You can go back and look at this. So when you're making a decision, or in this case, I'm disagreeing with somebody that's given some really bad advice, we're going to back it up with actual true statistical facts. So let's go through the playoffs. All right, Rams, they were the dog. They won and covered. Taking the 2 points did not help you. Buffalo, -7.5, they won and covered. Philadelphia, -5.5, they won and covered. Washington was +3. They won outright. Taking the points did not help you. Houston won outright. Taking the points would not have helped you. Baltimore, -9, they won and covered. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games there. And let's go to the divisional games here. Okay, Rams in Philadelphia. Philadelphia won, but they did not cover. So that was a case where the points did come into play. Baltimore, Buffalo. Buffalo was the underdog. They won and covered. The 1.5 or 1 point did not help you. Kansas City and Houston. All right, Kansas City won, but they did not cover. And then finally, Washington there. The +8 points did not help you. Washington won outright. So those were 10 games in the playoffs. The line only mattered in 2 of those games. Teams that win cover 80% of the time in the NFL, or teams that cover win outright 80% of the time. So there's the proof. And you can do that for virtually any season, any week in NFL. But if you get a decent sample size, it's going to come to roughly 80%. Now let's go back to his statement about overtime. Another issue with this is he's basing his advice on overtime rules. So another important probability we need to figure out, or stat, how often do games in the NFL go to overtime? The answer is 6%. So he's advocating you do something because of a 6% probability. And then this scenario that he's describing, I don't know how you would factor the odds of what he's describing actually happen. My guess is it's probably closer to 1% where that scenario would actually play out, to where you would need that point. So to summarize this, if you're playing a team in the NFL, it is advantageous to lay the points if it's a favorite and play the dog on the money line. The only exception to that, let's say this line gets to -1 KC, then that would be a case to play on the money line, because more than likely the money line is going to be maybe -105, -110, depending on the book. And it would be advantageous to play on the money line. So that way you wouldn't have to cover the quote -1, and the -1 odds are going to be -110 anyway. Same with the underdog. If this line was to get to 1 on Buffalo, it would be advantageous to take the 1 point, because again, if you played it, you wouldn't want to play it on the money line, because then they have to win outright, and it would be advantageous to get that 1 point, because the cost of that would be the same on the money line as it would be taking the point. And that's the only exception to that rule. Hope this video helps. If you want access to these power rankings that I showed you earlier, $50 a month, there's a link to join in the description box. Greatly appreciate you guys watching this video. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.